In this video, I give my thoughts about Edition Wars. This is my response to, I believe the way you would say it is Frostsoft's D&D and his article on Last Word on Warring Edition. And what sort of triggered me, shall we say trigger word, I'm not particularly happy with that idea, was his line, "The other day I saw the legendary Frank Menzer step into an edition war and just shut the whole thing down." I'll talk more about that phrase in a minute and why it caused some interesting triggers and memories from me. So I'm going to talk about 4 editions of Dungeons and Dragons, and that's because these were the most memorable in mine, and I think I'm going to give some constructive criticism of 4 separate editions. First, I want to talk about original Dungeons and Dragons. This was the first edition that I played, and I highly enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun, and I think you can say that there's one really constructive criticism that you can label at it. It was disorganized. The rules were scattered over many books and magazines, and it was a mess to know where some of the rules were. It was difficult to do that, but once you start running it, it was fairly easy. The rules had some arcane things about it, but it was a lot of fun. But it was the fact that you can say it was disorganized. I challenge anybody to tell me it wasn't, because it really was a disorganized set of rules. Then out came first edition Dungeons, or Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. Let's get its name right. It's not first edition, it's Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. Look at the spines of the books, if you happen to have a copy, which I do, and it's not listed as first edition. It was Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. This was one of the subtle complaints about Gary Gygax. He wanted a different name, and my understanding is he actually thought about changing the name significantly because he wanted to separate it from Dungeons and Dragons specifically for copyright issues because of some of the things he was doing with TSR. And it affected him personally financially because he owned the copyright to all the first edition or Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. They actually say by Gary Gygax, and if you check the copyright, that was it. That was part of the reason that Gygax was ousted out of TSR, was some of his greed. And those of you who don't know the story, Gygax, for many of us, when AD&D came out, was a name that was reviled. I still dislike many of the things he did. He is not a revered figure to many of us who went through that. He is viewed as someone who was extremely greedy and did some terrible things to the game in the name of greed. And that's the thing that people don't remember about him. It's now, how wonderful Gygax was. And they don't understand what he was greed and how he was sued so many times by Arneson. I actually went to a convention and heard Arneson speak, and after his discussion, he was talking about some of the things and how stupid the legal firm at TSR was, because anyway. But that's getting off the point. Advanced Dungeons and Dragons introduced 2 new things that, in my mind, weakened the game. AD&D introduced the concept of playing one character at a time. Up to then, there's nothing in the rules about even any concept of just playing one character at a time. And in fact, if you know from playing from Chainmail, that what happens is that normally it was players played many player characters, because you would have that, and then you would also have the henchmen. And today you don't see much about henchmen, but it was common because this is the heritage that Dungeons and Dragons comes from. It comes from the concept of military, in fact miniature chainmail war games. And it comes into the adding role-playing concepts where you're playing individuals, but the original Dungeons and Dragons fit well with using the chainmail type rules. In fact, what we consider the normal combat system for OD&D, it actually was listed as the alternative combat system because the preferred combat system was viewed as the rules for chainmail. And look at the original books, and that's what it says. And AD&D changed that, where it took what was viewed as the alternate combat system, which most people used anyway, and put it into the mainstream of the game. But with doing so, they did away with the concept of having many characters, or they discouraged it. You didn't have that. And for me, it was really sort of a problem, because I have one large dungeon, which actually is almost impossible to move into modern editions, because the assumption is that you're going to walk in with 10 player characters player characters per person. So you normally would have a group of 50 or more player characters with maybe 100 or 200 henchmen coming into the dungeon, because it's extremely deadly. It was designed to kill mass groups of player characters and henchmen. And what happens is that's the problem. So this was an interesting concept which changed the game. Now, that's a game changer on the face of it. Was that the second introduction was where it started to introduce the rules about just because you go to 0 hit points, you're not dead. You can be healed and you don't die immediately. And it's got really complicated all the way up through 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th edition about he's not dead, Jim. That's the phrase that springs to mind, is that it's a difference. So what happens is that that's a change that some of us didn't like. Some people did the idea of going back more role-playing individuals rather than role-playing groups, and the character's not dead. That gets more into what I've heard one reviewer or one commentary saying that's much more where we get into the concept of superhero, which what characters are. Now, I'm not going to talk about 2nd and 3rd because I didn't want to spend the time going back and refreshing my memory, because it's been a few years since I played 2nd edition or 3rd edition, simply because it's been a few years since they were out there. I played 4th edition fairly recently, as within the past year, and the criticism I have of 4th edition is that it discourages the concept of the theater of the mind gaming. That all these feats with regard to the characters, do I have combat advantage? Am I beside or behind this? It almost required a map, and it required a map with a grid. Everything was geared toward a rectangular grid rather than a hex grid. So that's my criticism of the 4th edition. The speed of gameplay was fairly slow during that. The 5th edition, there are 2 constructive criticisms I'm going to make of 5th edition. One is the page numbers are hard to read, and it's a complaint I have, that I normally have a fairly brightly lit room, and for me, because I wear bifocals, and I actually, where it gets hard for me is I have a set of glasses for my computer, and then I have a set of normal glasses which are bifocals, for me to actually see the page numbers, and this is almost unique to 5th edition, that I can't read the numbers because it's like gray on gray or brown on gray, and it's hard to see. There's not enough contrast with the page number. And for someone at my age playing the game, that's a real problem, because you go to the index, which is another issue. The index is not very good. And they obviously never heard of the concept of what's called a permuted index, because you have index references referencing other index references, which then, so you can go from one index reference to another index reference to get the page number, where they could have put the page number in the first place and saying that it references the other one is also listed there, the other topic. That would have been better. So hopefully those are all constructive criticisms of 4 editions. Now, this is where I get into the real problem with this whole thing about edition warring, and the concept of saying anything bad about an edition is voicing hatred. Criticizing something is not hatred. Criticizing something is having an opinion about something. In essence, if you come up and say, I don't like broccoli, or I don't like beets on my salad, and you go up to the salad bar and there's both broccoli and beets, saying I don't like them, that's not hatred, that's a personal opinion. And it just affects the way I make my salad at a salad bar. And I actually do happen to like beets, but I'm okay on I like broccoli, but I don't like it in my salad particularly well. But what happens is that we get back to Frank Mentzer. Frank Mentzer was a sycophant of Gary Gygax. And what he did to first edition, when he produced the Red Book, was, in my opinion, rather awful. And dealing with people who learned from the Red Book is there. The analogy that I'm going to draw with this one is the Red Book, Red Book, D&D Red Box is like McDonald's. McDonald's sells a lot of hamburgers. I think everybody will agree that McDonald's sells a lot of hamburgers. Are they very good? No. They're cheap. They will fill you up. They're not particularly healthy. And that's what my view of the Red Box was. It was cheap, not very good, and it gives you something to play and you can have some fun, but it really wasn't a very good game. And I remember the first time when the Red Box came out, and I sat and watched somebody play, and I thumbed through the rules and I go, hey, why in the expletive deleted would you want to use that when the other rules are there? Now, if that was all you could afford, I can understand. It's like McDonald's is all you can afford, and there's an interesting question, would you really want to do that or fix something at home? Because you can fix it at home and it's cheap and so on, but the whole concept of that. And so Frank Mentzer, when I said he put an end to the edition wars, there's not edition wars. This whole concept of edition wars is crap. I would use a stronger expletive, but I try not to on the videos. I try and be a little bit more polite. But what happens is that people can have opinions about their edition. It's like people can have opinions about what fast food restaurant they prefer to go to. Do you prefer Wendy's? Do you prefer McDonald's? Do you prefer going to something else like Chipotle or Taco Bell? It's not hatred to like something different. If you want to play Savage Worlds, fine. Play Savage Worlds. If you want to, there's a whole bunch of other games that are out there that are interesting if you want to play in a science fiction setting and play Traveller. Saying that you like Traveller is not saying you hate 5th edition. That's a different thing. You may prefer a science fiction setting, you may prefer over a fantasy setting, but that isn't hatred. So this whole concept that edition wars, that it's hatred to, as the word was quoting from the article, and I'll put the link down, this was down below, break free of your prejudices and broaden your view, and you will have and you will see the direct effect that your see the direct effect that negativity and conflict has on the hobby. And I go, what? It doesn't affect the fast food business by people saying, I don't like McDonald's. I mean, there are people who say, McDonald's should pay more or have better. That's a different discussion rather than saying that the food at McDonald's is not the greatest in the world, but it's cheap. And that's what this whole thing about edition warring. It's people having the right to have an opinion. And I hate to see when someone comes in and says, he's an expert in the field, he's been doing it for 35 years, and we want you to shut up all this negativity about this. It's so terrible that people have negative opinions about a game. I have negative opinions about fourth edition. I thought that the fact that the grid, the fact that you had to have a rectangular grid and everything was geared toward miniatures rather than theater of mind is something I disliked, and I was glad to see much of that gone in fifth edition. And so what happens is that is that negative? No, I'm saying that that's not the kind of game that I want to run, and I was very clear about that. And when I was gaming, that I had problems with the fourth edition, and that's why I moved to the fifth edition. Was it solved some? If you that's what you enjoy, fine, great, go with that. Just don't force me into it. Let me have an opinion, and that's what I see with this. That's why I view this whole statement is an attempt to shut down people from having opinions. I say, think, review it yourself, come up with your own ideas and opinions. Do some critical thinking. One of the things that they supposedly teach in college is critical thinking, that you can evaluate ideas on your own. And this whole concept that viewing something is having a negative opinion about it is negative, and we have to stop that, and it's hatred. No, that's shutting down critical thinking. Evaluate the facts yourself, see which one you like, and make your own decisions. Don't let other people make your decisions or stop you from having an opinion. You should be able to have an opinion about what you like. If you're an adult, you should be able to say, I don't like beets. Or I like beets on my salad. Is that hatred? No. Is that negativity? No, I'm not saying that people shouldn't be able to grow beets and harvest them and pickle them and things like that. No, I can understand that some people may not like to have beets on their salad. Some people do. That's why you see them on salad bars. That's why I think you should be able to have an opinion about a game. You should be able to take your own house rules and modify it to the way you want to play so that you have fun. But think. And so what I want you to take away from this, my rant here, is that I think people should think for themselves. Don't let someone who supposedly is an expert shut down a discussion because they're, quote, an expert on the topic. Doesn't mean that you can't have that they've been in the industry for 35 years and that they sold a best-selling edition. So obviously they can shut down a discussion. That's getting into where you're letting someone steamroll your opinion, that your opinion isn't valid, that your research isn't valid, that just because they sold the most, by this argument, McDonald's should be the only fast food restaurant out there because they sold the most. So that we should shut down all the others, and saying that if you want to go to any other fast food restaurant is hatred. And it's negativity and we have to shut it down. No. Think. Look at the facts yourself. Learn what is called critical thinking, where you can evaluate the biases and the prejudices of the people that are making the statements, and think for yourself. This is one of the most important things you need to do, is think for yourself. And this whole statement that, I can shut down this disagreement. Two honest people can sit down and have a disagreement about opinions. That should be true about just about anything. You should be able to sit down and have a rational discussion with another person. And the problem I have is that when I get passionate, my voice gets loud. That's very true. In this video here, I've got louder than I probably should have, but that's me, and I know that, and that's a limitation that I have about myself, that I sometimes get passionate and I get loud. But I want you to take away from this: think, evaluate for yourself, and make the decision. And don't let someone supposedly an expert in the field go, "Oh, it's negativity and hatred if you do that." That's true about so many things in life, that you should be able to question and look at the facts, make your own decision as an adult, and say, no, they're wrong. And it's not negativity, it's not hatred, it's making a critical decision. You should do that about the way you think, the way you vote, the way you, what you have for dinner. Whether you decide you're going to be a carnivore or a vegan or vegetarian, think and evaluate for the facts for yourself, and that's fine. It's, as an adult, you should be able to make those decisions. And what happens is that I think this whole concept of shutting down edition warring, there's no edition warring. What happens is good people have differences of opinion. That's not warring. Saying that there are problems with something is not being negative. That is saying that there are problems. Saying that typesetting in fifth edition is a problem because for me, where I have a hard time reading the numbers, it's not being negative about the edition, it's being negative about an aspect of that edition. That's not hatred. That's saying that there's a problem, and hopefully they will fix it with the next printing. That's all that would be required, is they could fix it on the next printing, so it'd be easier. Changing the ink color for a printing would not be a big deal for them. And maybe it would. I don't know how screwed up their typesetting architecture is. But what happens is that people need to evaluate for yourself, and this concept of just because I disagree with something, it's hatred, is wrong. I can disagree with something, and I may like the substance, but I may disagree with it. I may dislike the way somebody fixes a salad. They may not want to eat the salad they fix for me, that I may want to go fix it for myself. And the same thing is true if I'm sitting there, there's a McDonald's or there's a Wendy's. I'll probably go to Wendy's rather than I will go to McDonald's. I may go to Kentucky Fried. I may go to Taco Bell. There's a whole host of options that I can choose. But just because McDonald's sold the most, I don't value their opinion any higher. Just like the sycophant Frank Menzer, I don't view him as legendary. I view him as another one of those evil, greedy people who worked at TSR, who sucked the blood out of it, who caused it to basically die, and until it was pulled away from those greedy people. And then it took off for a while, but then they had other management issues. So I read this, and it just caused me to want to reply to this. And my view is, go check the facts for yourself. Go read about why some of these things, take a look at each of the editions. It's not edition warring. It's just having an opinion. But learn to think critically. Pick up a book on critical thinking and read through it. See what, if you're in college, it normally should be one of the required classes in many colleges, that you take a course on critical thinking. Apply it to your gaming, to what games you want to play, what editions you want to use. So think. So if there's anything I have said many times throughout this thing, think for yourself. Don't let somebody shut you down because you have a differing opinion. If you like my video, press the thumbs up button. I'd appreciate that. Or if this interests you, you can always subscribe to my channel. There's a button right above. I look forward to hearing some comments. Tell me what you think about this, and I'll try and reply, and we can see if I'll do some more of these. Thank you.